What's up, YouTube? This is Juju here with another Market Watch for Gods Unchained. Before we begin, please like and subscribe to the channel. It helps me out tremendously. Also, Merry Christmas. Hope everyone had a great holiday this past weekend. So we have about 60 cards to go over, so let's go ahead and start. First up, we have Stolen Plans. Target an opponent, delve a card belonging to that god's domain. The domains are Death, Deception, Light, Magic, Nature, and War. We had a price spike earlier. Buyouts went from 60 to $1, or 60 cents to $1. Nothing too crazy here. I think Deception cards are just going to be on the uptick just because of... There's a Thief deck that got 23 wins this weekend. It was pretty good. I advise you guys to check that out on gudex.com if you haven't already. Might makes right. Give 2/2 to each creature in your hand. This card received a spike earlier as well. About 40 cents. Went from 60 cents to $1. Dragon of the First Filler received a crazy spike. It went from $1.60 over to $4, which is pretty nutty. Not too bad. Trial of the Innocents. At the end of your turn, double the strength of each of your creatures and give them afterlife deal damage equal to this creature's strength. Split randomly across all enemy creatures. Not a bad card, if you ask me. It spiked all the way from 166 all the way to 337 over the weekend, so that was pretty interesting. Trial of the False Reflection. Summon a copy of a target creature. That copy has, at the start of your turn, summon a copy of this creature. I actually experimented with this card for a ramp magic deck. It did pretty well. If your opponent doesn't have an answer to the affected card or the creature, they're just going to keep spamming copies of that creature. So it's pretty interesting. But it went from $2 to $3. Oh no, almost $4. So almost doubled in price. Satyr Hypnotist. At the end of your turn, a random enemy creature goes to sleep. This card spiked from $2.53 all the way to $4. I always thought this card was pretty strong, especially for aggro deception decks. Sleep is a very overpowered mechanic in the game right now. Trial of the Underworld. Summon a random 5-mana creature from either void to your side of the board. Repeat for 6, 7, and 8 mana. Give solace to each of your creatures. Yeah, crazy buyout right here. 77 copies were bought, raising the price from $3 to now the cheapest is like $7. So that's pretty interesting to see. Good card. It seems like a finisher. I don't know if it's crazy good, but we'll see. Olympian Guard. Frontline. At the end of your turn, or at the start of your opponent's turn, this creature has 2 strength or less. Give it 1/1. This card is pretty good in terms of Zoo Light. Basically, it's a 2-mana 1/2, but it has the upside of becoming a 2-mana 3/4 in 2 turns. Not too bad. It's a little too slow for my taste, but I could see why a buyout happened. Up next, we have Pan Marauder. This is a 6-mana 6/6 deception card. When this creature attacks and roar, reduce by 2 the cost of each non-deception, non-neutral card in your hand. So this is pretty much for any of the Thief decks. As we mentioned, there's a Thief deck that got 23 wins this past weekend. So that's possibly why we saw the uptick in prices. Selena's Insight went through a major spike. It went from $2.80 on Christmas Day to $7 2 days later. That's amazing. 6-mana wild card. Target one of your creatures to attack a random enemy creature. If your creature survives and the enemy creature dies, destroy all enemy creatures. That's wild, but it makes sense. It's a little too... maybe it's not. It's not too expensive of a removal, but I always think that 6 mana is just... It's turn 7 removal card pretty much. 4, Dragonkin Caller. It's a 4-mana 3/3. Roar, pull a random dragon from your deck into your hand. Definitely spiked. As you can see here, 54 copies were bought yesterday, and it went from $3 all the way to $7. Could be an important card depending on if any dragon support comes in the next set, but we'll have to wait and see. Cruel Overseer, at the end of your turn, if your god has 15 health or less, summon 2 1/1 Implings. It's a 3 mana 3/4. Pretty good stat line for a 3 mana card. Got bought out. Zoo Death is actually a thing. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw this in play, or see some play in the near future. Steadfast Scout, Roar, if you control at least 2 other creatures, give 2/2 to this creature. It's a 3 mana 1/3 Amazon with potential of becoming a 3/5. Pretty decent stat line, but why don't you run... I feel like there are other cards that do better in the stat line, like Frenzied Boar or Frenzied Bear for that matter. But we did see a buyout, did increase by like $3 at the price point. Aetheric Alarm, 3 mana relic, 5 durability. After your opponent summons a creature, summon a 0/2 Aetheric Echo with frontline. At the start of your turn, give minus durability to this relic. So this can happen an unlimited amount of times for 5 turns, which is kind of wild. It's a pretty good anti-aggro card, but I do see some relevance in Zoo Light, especially if you're playing against the mirror match, because... or maybe not even the mirror match, but against another deck that summons a lot, because it gives you so much value out of that one turn. So this is a pretty busted card. It went up, it's been going up gradually, but over the weekend it spiked around like $9 to $10, so that's pretty interesting to see. We'll keep an eye on this card because it does have a lot of potential. Deathwatch Curate, 5 mana 5/6. At the end of your turn, if your god has 15 health or less, heal it for 3. 5 mana 5/6 is nothing to stop at. It also has the Anubian tag, which has a lot of support, especially in death. It jumped a lot actually before Christmas. Before Christmas Eve, it was at $6.54 and it spiked all the way to $14.69. So that's something. $14.69, nice. Next up, we have Ludia's Deception. It's a 1 mana deception spell that targets an opponent, choose a card in their hand, and shuffle it back into their deck. Both players draw a card. This card is actually pretty good. The reason why, it's a 1 mana spell, so it's super fast to play. You can play it on turn 1, and it's free info. You basically get to disrupt your opponent's plan and strategy, and then from there you get to see what cards he has in hand, and then from there you get to draw a card. Your opponent gets to draw a card too, but the trade-off is the information that you get, which is pretty good. You can set up your next couple turns based on what kind of removal your opponent has access to at that point in time. So not a bad card. Archmonian Hydra, 7 mana 6/6 wild card. Confused, Roar, summon a 3/2 Hydra head with regen 1. After a Hydra head dies, summon 2 of them. Yeah, this card is pretty good. It's a value machine for sure. 7 mana, it makes it a little harder to summon. This is like a turn 9 summon. Of course, fewer if you have a bag of tricks, but for the most part, a buyout happened over the weekend. Went from 12 to 16, or to 17, back to 16. We'll see if this price stays or it goes back down. But they do. Whoever wants to buy and raise the price, they have this wall here at 17.19. So they have to figure it out, or they. If you want to raise the price, you have to get past this, and it looks like the volume won't support it, but we'll see. You never know. There could be more buyouts that happen with this card later on. Shadow of Lethanon, 1 mana 1/1 deception card. At the end of your turn, this creature gains hidden. At the start of your turn, this creature deals 1 damage to the opposing god. This card is pretty good, especially when it gets buffed. I remember one of my first instances playing against this card. They just buffed this card to the point where it'd be hitting me in the face for like 5 damage every turn, and I'd have no way of stopping it. So it's a pretty good card. One of the few trial rares to break above 40. I think the other one is Form of Power, but this card is something you should keep in mind, especially for those aggro hidden like Deception Rush decks. But yeah, Form of Power, there we go. speaking of form and power, it's a 1 mana spell. Deal 2 damage to an enemy creature and 1 damage to your opponent's god. Went all the way up to $46 on Christmas. That's crazy. $46 for a rare, but 1 mana spells, especially in a class like Magic, makes sense. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw it gain a higher price point than 40. Hippocrate's Monster, 9 mana death card with ward. When this creature is summoned, it gains the combined strength and health of each creature in your void. This card has been splashed in Board Wipe Death. It's not a bad card because you can revive it an unlimited amount of times thanks to Neferu's Kopesh. But over the weekend it spiked from 62 to almost 100, which is kind of nutty. Keep an eye out for this card because I feel like it's going to be a staple in a few more decks. Orfeo, Champion of Deception, backline deadly, hidden for 1 turn. After you play a card, play this creature to the board if it's in your hand. It's a 1/1 guild card. Spiked over the weekend as well. It was also played in that Thief deck. Pretty good card. It's free tempo, and it has deadly, so not bad. Lysander, Champion of Light, frontline ward. At the start of your turn, completely heal this creature. After a friendly creature is healed, they gained 1 strength. 6 mana 3/7 is a decent stat line, but the best part about this is the ward. And it just keeps gaining strength if you don't kill it right away. And the 7 stat line makes it pretty hard to kill. So that's pretty good. Zoo Light has been a thing in the meta for the past month or so, and this card has only been climbing up in value. Chirin, the Teacher, 1 mana 1/1, regen 1, roar, randomly give 1/1 to another one of your creatures. Give -1 to your durability to your opponent's relic. Definitely spiked over the weekend. This card went from 100 not even 2 weeks ago, all the way to 164, with the lowest price you can buy right now at 175. This card is pretty good. I don't know if it justifies the price point, but a 1/1 mana 1/1 that gives 1/1 and regen 1 doesn't sound too bad. It also relics are also gaining a lot of popularity in this meta, so relic removal is always welcome. Selena, Champion of Nature, backline ward. Your creatures lose confusion. Ability, deal 2 damage to an enemy, then confuse a random enemy creature. It's a 4 mana 3/4, decent stat line, but we did see a buyout today. It went from 150 and now the lowest price you can get it at is 200, so that's pretty crazy. Excuse me. 6 mana 3/5, Neferu, Champion of Death. When this creature is summoned, deal 3 damage to each other creature. Afterlife, if your god has 15 or health or less, pull this creature into your hand and permanently reduce its cost by 1. There's a buyout that happened. Went from 220 all the way to 345. Which is pretty crazy, but I do understand why the price spiked. Board Wipe Death has been consistently trying to deal with aggro decks like Frenzied Aggro War or Zoo Light or even the Zombie Necroceptor Death deck. So Neferu seems like an obvious choice in this meta. Not only that, it's a renewable source, especially a renewable source of removal if you're below 15 health, so it's infinite value. As long as you don't kill yourself, because you can kill yourself with Neferu's effect. Alright, now we're on to the Aetherbots. This is the only Aetherbot card, but we're on to the Aetherbots section. So first up is the 4 mana Magic Missile Launcher. It's a relic with 3 strength and 2 durability. Blitz, always good. If a relic has Blitz, it's decent. to say the least, because you can act on it right away after you play. But Afterlife, deal 2 damage to 2 random creatures, heal your god for 4. This card is really good, especially in control war variants, but it's a good source of value for any mid-range type of war deck as well. We see a price spike go from about 250 all the way to 481, which is kind of crazy, but it makes sense due to the nature of this card. All right, on to some core cards now. First up, we have Void Flash, 4 mana death spell, select a friendly creature and enemy creature, destroy both of them. This card does really well in the zombie death deck because you have so many tokens that you can like kill off in trade with like your opponent's more valuable creatures, such as a Lysander. Very good card. It spiked all the way from $8 to $16, so that was a 100% increase. Keep an eye out for this card in the future. We have another death card, 3 mana Fickle Cambion, which is a 3/3. Whenever your god gains health, this creature gains 1 health. Whenever your god loses health, this creature gains 1 strength. I think some aggro death decks have been doing well in the meta as well, so we have a price spike here, as Fickle Cambion does well in that 3 spot. But yeah, price spike went from pretty much double the price. It went from 12 all the way to 23. Next up, we have Warmonger Smith. This is staple in aggro war decks. Roar, give your relic 2 strength for its next attack. Does really well, pairs up with any relic really. But the best part is its stat line. It's 2 mana, 2/4. Which makes it a pretty hard creature to trade into. It spiked. Well, you can't see it in this draft, but it spiked from. Oh, maybe you can. Well, anyways, it spiked all the way to $40 this past weekend. It's a pretty good card. Keep an eye out Keep an eye out for it for the next couple weeks. Okay, next up we have Coralis Rune Moth. Man, some of these names are crazy. Which is a 3 mana 1/1 with backline. At the end of your turn, add a random rune to your hand and reduces cost to 0. This card spiked all the way from like $10 to like 35 over the week. Which might be because of the news that it's getting changed. Well, I don't know if it's like for sure getting changed, but it's on the playtest realm right now, and it's a 3 mana 0/0/3, and instead of giving a random rune to your hand and reducing its cost to 0, it's giving a random rune to your hand and reducing its cost to 1. That could be an influence why, but honestly, it's a pretty good card, especially if you get a free rune out of it. It's good value, and your opponent has to deal with it. You can't let it like sit there forever. Ooh, this one's a fun one. Managarmer, Moonhound. Confuse. Whenever this creature attacks, refresh 3 mana gems. It's a 3 mana 4/3. Yeah, it spiked over the weekend. It pretty much went from like 30 all the way to like $50. It might be because wild decks are coming back and are resurfacing, but it's a solid card. Next up, we have Asterius, Glittering One, Frontline Roar. Friendly creatures with strength 2 or less get 2/2. It's a 6 mana 4/6. Spiked all the way back up to $85, which is crazy. Before the Forge reopened, this was actually the card that costs the core card that costs the most. It's a very good card, especially for Zoolite, so it makes sense with the stat line. Okay, next up we have some Genesis cards. 2 mana, heads or tails. Randomly, either both gods take 4 damage or just the opposing god takes 3 damage. This card saw a little bit of a spike over the weekend. Some aggro deception decks have been doing pretty well, so it makes sense. People use this card as a burn card. It's a good finisher, or a good way to get some damage up. Next up, we have Ruthless Kaipora, which is a 5 mana 3/3 roar. This creature gains 1/1 for each friendly creature. It's also an Amazon, so it makes sense in Amazon Swarm decks. There's a buyout that happened over the weekend. It spiked all the way to $2, but now it's coming back down to like $1.92. Next up, we have Simple Satyr, which is a 1-mana 1/2 wild card. At the end of your turn, heal your guard for 2. Has a Mystic tag. There's a buyout that happened earlier this week. It went from $171 to almost $2, which is kind of wild. Not much to say here. Next up, we have Recursion, which is a 2-mana spell. Add 2 copies of a random spell from your opponent's void to your hand. There's a buyout that happened. 127 copies of the card were bought and went from 147, all the way to 262, which is a pretty decent price spike if you ask me. Okay, next up we have Reformation, which is a 1-mana spell. Set a creature's strength to 1 and give it 1 health. There was a buyout here that happened. Went from, we're looking at about it's a $1.50 price increase, which isn't too bad. Okay, this one. Life-Hid Informant, 2 mana, 1/2, hidden for 1 turn. Roar, add a copy of a random spell from your opponent's deck to your hand. This card was seen in the Thief deck that got 23 wins this weekend. It did pretty well, and I think for the most part, what it has going for him, it's an immediate +1. Pretty much, it's a value card, and it's hidden for 1 turn, so your opponent can't really like deal with it unless they have like AoE. But it jumped all the way from $2 to $5.66 over this week, with the lowest price you can find it for is $16.14 right now. So pretty interesting stuff. We'll keep an eye out and see if this Thief deck actually holds in the meta, or it's just like a phase. Alright, next up we have Master of Indulgences. This creature swaps health with another creature. It's a 4-mana 2/2. Very good card, especially in Zoo Light decks. It gives you lots of answers, especially for the bigger minions that you have to face, like a Lysander, for example. But yes, a very good card to deal with threats. Out of its Misery, it's a 1-mana spell. Deal 1 damage to a friendly creature. If it dies randomly, pull a creature from your deck into your hand and give it 3/3. This is a crazy buff for 1 mana. Of course, you're trading board for a creature or a card in your hand, but the value, especially if you're playing cheap minions, should be okay. Nothing to say here. It wasn't necessarily a buyout, but it was just a gradual increase over time. Okay, next up we have Field Martyr. This is a 3-mana 0/1 Amazon. Roar. This creature gains 1/1 for each other friendly creature. We did see a price spike over here. Maybe someone's buying out all the Swarm cards. But for the most part, it went from 265 all the way to 5, which is about a 100% increase. 4-mana 0/7 Ares Peacemaker. At the start of your turn, destroy all creatures. I always like this card. It reminds me of Doomsayer in Hearthstone days. But for the most part, we did see a buyout here from $3 all the way to $6. Nice. Okay, next we have Bone Pact Hunter, which is a 4-mana 3/3 Roar. Give a friendly Amazon +3 strength. +3 strength. I'm sorry, I can't talk today, chat. Just deal with it. But yeah. Anyways, we have price spike all the way from $4 to go all the way to $9. Pretty interesting stuff. Okay, next up we have Murdo's Daughter, which is a 5-mana 2/2 with Blitz. Pick 1. This creature gets 2/2, or another random friendly Amazon gets 4/3. Not bad, but also not like... I think it's pretty decent. I think whoever bought this out was just thinking, oh, it's an Amazon card. It seems pretty good. And it's from Genesis, and it's rare, so why not? But the price spike is pretty crazy, because it goes from $3.97 all the way to $18, which is pretty wild. That's pretty profitable if someone else, if that person were to sell. The only thing that doesn't justify this buyout is like you had to buy 39 copies of this card, but like the average volume that most players buy for this is like 5. So at the most, if you do sell these for $18, you'd only be able to sell like 3 or 5 a day. So that's pretty interesting to see. Keep an eye out for this card though, because maybe someone's onto something. Alright, next up we have Beam, which is a 4 mana spell. Deal 3 damage to target creature and 3 damage to your opponent. There was a buyout that happened earlier this week, and it jumped all the way from $9 to $28.52. Also, I don't think this card is good, but maybe I'm wrong. But 4 mana for 3 damage to a creature and 3 damage to your opponent seems like too pricey and too slow. When you can just use like I don't know, any of the 1 mana spells that Magic has available to them for that same purpose. Next up we have Canopi Hoarder. 5 mana 2/1, roar, select 2 different creatures in your void, trigger their afterlife abilities. This card did see a little bit of a buyout yesterday, 45, and now we see a price range, or a price increase. There's a big wall of resistance here at 33.70, so we'll see if we were able to make it out of that. But after that, there are a couple other like resistance points, but for the most part, there's a price spike over here. Someone's trying to buy out. Canopi Hoarder is a pretty good card. It's a lot of value for 5 mana, even though it's a 2/1, and it has the Anubian tag, so it's has a lot of support for death. Okay, moving on. Fanatic of Kanoom, Afterlife, unlock a mana lock for both players. 2 mana 3/2 Anubian. This card, very good for control death to get you to your higher mana cards. It's also a Nubian, and it's also an Afterlife, so it can be triggered with a lot of like the afterlife effects that death has. We did see a buyout here on the 23rd, and it peaked at around $50. Let's see the resistance actually. Yeah, there's a resistance line here at $50, but if we break past it, looks pretty clear. So we'll see if we can break past it. If not, it's totally fine, but this card is pretty good. I'd keep my eye on this card. Next up we have Ragnarok. 1 mana spell, deal 3 damage to each god and give burn 3 to each creature. There's a price spike over the week. Went from $30 all the way to $60. So 100% increase. It has consolidated back down to 50 for now. But for the most part, I would keep an eye out for this card as well, because this card is really good in board wipe death. Alright, Half-Life. This one recently spiked. Went from $33 all the way to $50. Very good card. Summon a creature with mana cost 3 mana or less from your void. Give it Blitz and Solace. This does really well with cards like Burrowing Scarab or Fanatic or Kanoom. Super good card. Not surprised this card had a price increase. Alright, next up, finally onto epics. So we have the Black Argo, which is a 5 mana 4/6 flank. Roar, each other friendly Olympian gains 1 strength and flank. This card received a buyout, and it jumped all the way from 30 to 52. Pretty decent price spike if you ask me. It is a Genesis card and an epic card, so I do expect it to gain value over time. Next up we have Clone. Copy the lowest cost creature in your hand. Jumped all the way from $87 to $110. Pretty good card. I can definitely see some like OTK implications for this card if there's like an OTK in the future, or even if you just want like an extra of a key card in a Magic deck like a Demetrios or something like that. It seems pretty interesting. But yeah, it's a very intriguing card. Looking forward to watching this in the future. Next up, we have Seraph, Frontline. Protected, Afterlife, set the attack of all enemy creatures to 1, and it's a 5 mana 1/1. Yeah, I can see this card being okay. there are just so many better cards to fit in the 5 mana slot for Zoo light decks, but I do see why there was a spike. So it spiked all the way from 76 all the way to 144, and now it's consolidated to like 122. Not bad, but yeah, I can definitely see why it was bought out. Next up, we have Compost Charm. Heal your god for 10. If you have 8 cards in your void, add a random natured card to your hand. This card received another buyout. It went from 79 to like 163. That's a pretty crazy price increase, especially for a 2 mana spell that is a conditional like card conditionally you get a card back, but it just seems like a -1 for 10. But I don't know, maybe I'm missing something here. Maybe the heal your god for 10 part is really overpowered, but I don't think it justifies that price point at all. Sulfuric Rain, it's a 1 mana spell. Each creature gets burned +2, and afterlife, draw a card. Very good card for board wipe death. It spiked over the weekend from 124 all the way to like 186. Very good card. It's an epic and it's Genesis set, so it'll do pretty well. Okay, next up we have Highborn Knights, 4 mana 3/3 frontline protected ward. We covered this card last week, but it spiked again, and it went from $400 to like $839, which is kind of crazy. Yeah, I think this card is good. Frontline protected ward is a great combination to have. Man, it maybe just the stat line. Because the stat line feels kind of weak. 3/3 for 4 mana. I get it, but it is pretty hard to deal with. But I don't know if I'd pay $800 for this card. Yeah, that's insane. Next up, we have Apocalypse Now. 7 mana death card. Destroy all creatures again. This spiked over the weekend. Again? Yeah. I mean, it's been a gradual like increase, but I feel like it's consolidating over to this like 700, 800 price range. Very good card. Nothing to say. It just clears the board no matter what. Next up, we have Demogorgon, 7 mana 4/6. We all know what it does, but over the weekend it spiked almost to 2K. It actually hit 2K. Oh my god, that's wild. And then it's consolidating back down. Lowest price we can get it at is $19.61, which isn't too bad, but it's definitely like a lot pricier than, man, like, can you imagine getting this card at what? $37? Jeez. Crazy time. But yeah, what a return on investment. All right, next up we have Mistress Scythia, 3 mana 2/1 Amazon. Destroy all cards in your deck with 2 costs or less. You know what? This card could see some use, especially if like you need to find like, you know, higher value cards in your mid-range WoW deck, which could make sense. But yeah, experience a buyout Christmas Eve, and the price range raised from $80 to $117. Cool. Oh my god, we're almost there, y'all. So we have Lord of Whispers, hidden flank. When this creature damages your opponent, add a copy of a card to your opponent's deck or hand. I think this card was also featured in the 23-win Thief Deception deck. Nothing much to say here. Hidden flank is pretty good. 4 mana 2/4. It's an okay stat line, but it is a value generator, so it makes sense. Peculiar Spellworm, 1 mana 2/6. Roar. Your opponent randomly pulls a spell from their deck. Reduce the cost of the spell to 1. This card seems really good, but it also I don't like the drawback. The trade-off is your opponent gets a spell from the deck and they have to reduce it to 1. So like if it's a big value spell, that could suck. But that stat line is pretty crazy. 1 mana 2/6. like wild. But yeah, but we did see a price increase. It was, wow, 2 weeks ago it was like what, 111, now it's 199, almost $200. So pretty wild stuff. Okay, Astria's Envoy, 6 mana 4/5 roar, give a random other creature with the lowest attack 4/4. So it's basically a 6 mana 8/9. Very good card. 6 mana is just way too slow for me. It's like, that's turn 7. So you should either have like a very established board, or you're locked in like a mid-range battle. I don't know, but it seems like a good card. There was a buyout that happened this past week. Went from 116 all the way to 276. Woo, this is wild. Ah, yes, Mimicus. So this is a 1 mana 1/1. At the end of your turn, while this creature is in your hand, transform it into a creature in your opponent's hand. Keeps this ability after the change. So, yeah, this card was also featured in the Deception deck. Not too bad. Yeah, I think it's a pretty good card because it gives you free information, and if your opponent is playing like a high value minion, you get a chance to like use it. So that's pretty interesting. But it went from 139 all the way to 293, which is kind of wild. Crazy jump. Next up, we have Death Unborn, which is an 8 mana spell. Soulless. Draw 2 cards, set each god's health to 20. Destroy a random enemy creature would cost 5 or more. Change your god power to Blight. Pretty good card. Seems like a finisher spell, to be honest. Yeah, or it's just an infinite value generator, depending on like what Blight does. I actually don't know what it does, but there's a buyout that happened. Went from 157 all the way to 310, so almost double in price, which is kind of insane. Okay, I think this is the last one. We have Avatar of Nature, which is a 5 mana 5/5. At the end of your turn, summon a 1/1 walking plant. We did cover this last week, so I'm not going to go over the effect. But for the most part, it went from 343 all the way to 603, which is about 100% like price increase. I think it's a very good card, especially in wild mid-range decks. And if you're looking to play like the best version of the deck, you should be including this card. All right, cool. Well, that was it. Thank you guys for tuning in. That was a pretty long like video. If you enjoyed this content, please like, subscribe, and maybe share. Also, feel free to leave any comments, regarding the video. I love interacting with like people from the community here. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh, also apologies for no face cam. We have what was I gonna say? Gosh, apologies for no face cam, just because yeah, it's my camera's not working. So but we'll try to be back either next week or sooner, because honestly 70 cards was a lot of material to go over, so we might do like 2 times a week now, or possibly even 3. We'll see. But yeah, anyways, if you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe to the video to help out the channel, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye. Peace.